Interested in taking a deep dive each week into a compliance or compliance-related topic? Then Compliance Into the Weeds is the podcast for you. Join Matt Kelly, the coolest guy in compliance, and Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, as they go into the weeds to flesh out a story which you can use to better inform your compliance program. Both you and your compliance program will be the better for listening to this podcast. Compliance Into the Weeds is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox, back for another episode, and today I have with me Ian Denis. Ian has the distinction of two things. One, he's the youngest person to ever be on this podcast. So, Ian, great news on that, even younger than my daughter. Second of all, he is the son of a law school classmate and good friend as well. So, Ian, with that incredibly long-winded introduction, first of all, welcome and thank you for taking the time to visit with me today.
Thank you for having me. This is a pleasure.
So, Ian, can you tell us what your current status is and where you are located?
I'm currently camping out in Vermont since I go to school at UVM. What happened was I went home for spring break, and then once everything started going in uproar and going down, I told my parents, hey, if you don't mind, I'm going to get away from the high population density of the DMV, DC, Maryland, Virginia metro area, or I should say DMV. It's our slogan. Decided to get away from that, and I've been camping out in my apartment really ever since then.
So where is the university you attend?
Burlington.
And how large is Burlington population-wise?
I looked this number up recently, and so I should know it, but I unfortunately do not know it off the top of my head, but I can look it up just this moment. 42,000.
Okay. So what year are you in school?
A rising senior.
And what's your major?
Studying business and accounting.
So could you tell us about your summer job? Because that's how we got reconnected recently.
So as you might imagine, I was one of many people who had some plans kind of fall through as a result of everything that's been happening. Actually, I had intended on working at fan promotions at Vermont Lake Monsters over this past summer, but naturally there's no minor league baseball season to have. So, three and a half weeks ago, I was looking through my phone, and then someone who I friended on Facebook and had sort of been nagging me to sort of take a job offer from her from the past year or so reached out to me one more time, and I was like, well, I'm not doing anything else this summer, so I was like, yeah, sign me up and I'll see what it's like.
So tell us about the job you signed up for.
Mm-hmm. So I work for Vector Marketing, which is a marketing company, and we sell Cutco cutlery knives. Our main products are mostly knives, but we also sell cookware, flatware, other sorts of gifts and accessories. But as you might imagine, our main source of revenue is off of selling knives.
So what intrigued me was you're doing all this virtually and literally talking to people across the country. Could you tell us a little bit about that process for you?
Well, I don't know how to say this. It's more so a different skill of which I would say I would historically don't tend to have. Like after all, I spent an additional year in preschool because my parents were telling me I wasn't talking enough. And so it's kind of weird how now I'm working in a job where you have to convince people to buy a product, and you've got to do lots of talking and show a lot of excitement. So it's definitely something new, and I've been pretty comfortable with it so far.
Well, it certainly sounds like it stretched you in a way that perhaps you hadn't really explored before. But the other thing that struck me was it's just not you calling up saying, hey, I'm Ian Denis. I'd like to talk to you about this cutlery. You actually show them a video, and which I think it does I've seen the video, and it does a great job of describing the product, describe how it's manufactured, how it's used. And then you come on after the video and try to talk to the customer or potential customer. Could you talk about that? Really intrigued me, that video part and that part of the sales process. I was wondering if you could say a few words about that.
So as a part of our strategy to get people to buy products, we sort of chit chat with them at the start, and then we show them the video, which explains several of our products in depth and how and sort of what buying these knives are considered. We like to consider them an investment because these are knives that are supposed to last you for a long time. and so we show that video, and then afterwards is our duty as the sales representative to dig our way through what sort of some of the common items with which we sell, and then we sort of start big. We start offering our customers big, and then if they don't want all that much, we sort of work our way down to something smaller and smaller until something fits them to what they might want, if at all.
So how have you been reaching out, or can I describe the process of how you reached out to me?
Yes, you may.
Okay, so you cold called me, and you introduced yourself, and you said you referenced another potential customer that I'm well aware of, and wanted to know if I would give you the time to take a video call. Is that sort of how you are connecting with people?
That's a good short description on it. As a part of our strategy, we sort of don't dive into the specifics, so people don't overthink too much. We sort of do the right amount to try to get them to say yes to us, because it's kind of what you need to do if you want to sell things to people. Is you kind of need people to say yes to the meeting first. That's one big step with which you follow into, and so. But yeah, it's basically you sort of start off with most people. It's you of course you introduce yourself, and as you aforementioned, sort of try to draw a connection with them of any sort, whatever it may be, no matter how distant, vague, or super densely close it might be. Just sort of gain that sense of community, and also just establish that you're not a complete strangers. And I think there are just that one little thing in common can sort of up in their mood and be like, yes, him, her. It's like incredible.
Well, you also well described that, and what intrigued me was sort of that entire process and how that could actually be incorporated into my world, which is the corporate world, for the discipline that I work in, compliance, to help compliance officers understand not only how to make a connection with someone, but how to communicate with them, and then how to follow up that communication with a verbal communication or some other form. So I was really intrigued by all of that, and how you are utilizing these same strategies that I try to advocate literally from your apartment in Burlington.
Yeah, our company really they really teach us how to sort of tackle in the right sort of way, because sort of each way you do it, you're going to increase your potential customer's mood, the more likely you are to sell something. And, why else do we do these meetings over Zoom face to face? Because you get that face to face interaction as if you're actually there in person in their house. Because what people in our company selling Cutco have done in recent years is actually done presentations with them in person, but naturally this is not exactly the time for that. So the closest thing we can get to duplicating that per se is set up the face-to-face meeting, really work on enunciation, articulation, and other sorts of communication skills so that they can really be convinced by you.
Well, those are great actual strategies for the corporate world too. So thanks for sharing those with us. But now let's get to the fun part of this podcast. Because anyone who knows you, knows your family, knows of your love for hockey. And I assume it's going to be professional hockey, because that's all I've ever talked to you about. But perhaps it extends to college hockey now. But let's focus on the NHL. Do you see any chance for the 2020 season finishing this year?
I do. I definitely see a chance of it going both ways. It's all a question of if enough players want to play, and then if not enough do, then they're not exactly gonna finish if they don't feel like it. It's really the decision up to them, the players, if they want to play or they don't want to play. So, but I would say as of now, I feel like they'll find a way. I feel like they'll find a way to sort of get things done. It might not be super smooth, or maybe in some views it might be super bumpy. Other views it might not be as bumpy, but I feel like they'll find a way to do it. It's just going to be pretty strange.
So we've heard a lot of information about how the NBA is trying to create a bubble in Orlando. The Major League Baseball is taking steps. We haven't heard as much about what the NHL is doing. Do you have any kind of assessment on or views on how the NHL is approaching this as a health issue?
Well, I'd imagine that the NHL would do the same thing as the NBA, and it's just open hotels to like players and team personnel only, and basically have them stay impact in there, that they only leave to like go to practice or go to the rink, and basically everybody leaves as a group. Like nobody goes out on their own. And as you mentioned, right now they just determined that the hub cities are more likely than not going to be Edmonton and Toronto. So those players would be camped out there.
Do you see at this point any favorites for the 2020 Stanley Cup?
I mean, off the top of my head, just based on what we've seen in earlier days, I think it's reasonable for a lot of people to really, I mean, this is going to sound cliche, but sort of have high bets on the two teams that faced off in last year's Stanley Cup final in Boston and St. Louis. They've been tremendous all year. And Boston has leads the East by quite a few points, but of course they're going to have to defend their seeding in the in their three games they play against the other top four seeds in the East, and same with St. Louis. I'd say another team sort of in that mix, maybe as not an outshot, but always sort of in contention, is Colorado. And, I mean, Tampa Bay will be there, but granted, given how last year finished off, I don't know how many people can exactly trust them per se. And if you had to talk to me about the route of sleepers, man, there's just so many different teams that could be sleepers, and you never know who could pop off after this like 3.5, or I guess in this case it would be a 4.5 month hiatus. So a lot of it's pretty tough to tell, but a couple of those teams at the top really sort of, I would say, give me the most reason to think of them as top contenders.
Ian, when many people think of professional sports without fans in the stands, they think they're going to lose something. My sense with hockey players is if you iced up a driveway, they would get out there and skate and play just because they love doing it. They've been doing it since they're kids. Would that be a fair assessment in your mind?
I mean, that's a totally good view of thinking about it. I think the only difference is that as adults, they're just not used to it as much. Although even if they did spend the first 18 years of their life going into their ponds on their backyards at however many late hours into the night with the light on and spending time on themselves shooting in their backyard.
Do you see any long-term impact from COVID-19 going forward for the NHL?
Well, I guess you could say this about all leagues, but sort of I guess not just all leagues, but basically society as a whole is people taking more precautions to basically be sanitary, clean, and whatever long-term effects COVID could have on people who test positive from it. It will definitely affect more than just the NHL themselves. But I would say for the way the game is played, when we're not in the midst of a complete pandemic in the stage that we are currently in, I don't think that would be the case. Just simply how things are kept just simply how things are kept more clean, how equipment could be treated, or how they clean locker rooms per se and whatnot. And this could stretch as far as to even our own companies, for example.
Ian, unfortunately, we're near the end of our time, but I was wondering if listeners wanted any more information on the products, particularly the cutlery you're selling. Where could they go?
Where could they go? You can check out a lot of our products at cutco.com. It gives you a brief description of many sorts of knives and other types of accessories. You could also check up the website yourcutcodemo.com, which does a little brief description of the demo a lot of us do with you in order to get you to know our products better in a face-to-face interaction. But if you're thinking of getting some products today, I'm more than happy to help you. And if you're looking to work with us, you can totally contact my manager because we have plenty of openings available. That's for certain.
Ian, if anyone wanted to contact you directly, how could they do so?
They could contact my cell phone number or my email.
Could you give us those?
That would be 703-677-7604 or ian.denis@uvm.edu.
Well, Ian, this has really been a fascinating exploration. I wanted to thank you again for taking the time to visit with me today.
You're welcome, and thank you once again for having me. I really appreciate it.
This is Tom Fox. Thank you for listening to this episode of Compliance Into the Weeds. If you have any questions, you can email Matt at mkelly@radicalcompliance.com. You can email me, tfox@tfoxlaw.com. I hope you will join Matt and I again next week where we take up another topic and take a deep dive into the weeds of it. Compliance Into the Weeds is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network and a proud member of C-Suite Radio. Thanks again for listening. Thanks for being a loyal listener, and we look forward to visiting with you again. If you have a topic you'd like us to cover, please leave a message on the speaker app on the Compliance Podcast Network.